YouTube channel, because we do have that. So the session is now being recorded and will be uploaded to YouTube in the next couple of days, so that the small text is out of it. So Nigel, over to you.
Thanks, Nikita. And yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. And as he says, yes, I'm delighted to be here. I'm not a psychologist, but I know quite a few. And so, yeah, as he said, so I've last 15 years in sales and sales leadership roles, selling people development solutions of one sort or other. A big chunk of that has been selling and leading sales teams in psychometrics. And so I'm going to share my screen with you. Don't worry, I've only got half a dozen slides, so I'm not going to kill you with PowerPoint. And there we go. Or am I, Nikita, am I getting ahead of myself? Or is this all right? Yep.
No,
okay.
no, it's all good. Perfect.
Right. Are you seeing my PowerPoint?
Yep.
Or are you seeing my emails? Okay, great. So I've done the right thing. So yes, selling psychometrics. So they always say you should start off talking with a joke. Hopefully, as psychologists, you get the joke. Has everyone seen that one before? And as Nikita said to me when we were discussing before you all joined us, this is standardly distributed. So 15% of you will think this is funny, 15% won't, and the rest will think, nah. So feel free to share if you're the 15%. And I just, for sort of the next 10 minutes, I just want to kind of talk about three main things. The first one I'm going to talk about is sales cycle. Now, this isn't psychometric specific, but nevertheless, this is my experience. And again, if you're involved with the selling, you've probably seen, this is nothing original, you've probably seen something similar. That is in essence, from the selling point of view, what you go through. And so talking through the steps, lead generation, obviously that often is the hardest part. Now, when I first got into selling psychometrics 15 years ago, one of the questions I heard quite often, particularly when working with SME sized businesses of maybe less than 1,000 employees, what is psychometrics? Now, I think that probably has changed quite a lot. There's not too many people out there now who don't understand at least an idea of the concept. But also people tend to think about psychometrics as personality. And as we should hopefully all know, obviously personality is only part of what we can measure. But lead generation, and for me, lead generation is anything from having no idea you as a business exist to the point where somebody wants to find out more about what you do. Not necessarily wanting to talk to you. And this is where it's probably changed, certainly over the last 15, 20 years. With internet, with webinars, with information, buyers are so much more informed than they ever were. So lead generation is that point from complete ignorance to we now want to know more about what you do. And then we go into discovery. And obviously, again, you've probably heard lots of things about discovery and questions and open questions and understanding and essentially getting an idea of what the people are interested in buying and why. Buyers will buy for one of three reasons. They want to achieve something, they want to avoid something, or they want to fix something. As salespeople, we ideally want to do the fix because it creates some urgency. However, and again, this is where the internet changed selling massively. All this discovery your buyer can still be doing it without even talking to you. So it may not be till you've moved into progression. You may have already had some of the other vendors screened out. They've already kind of got your shortlist. Often that's when they started wanting to talk to you. Progression, understanding their buying process, who's going to be involved in that, what sort of the decision-making criteria is going to be. And one of the things I think is really important is understanding the difference between a business result and a personal win. Business results are usually ROI. Spend X with us and we will create X times X or whatever. That's really important. But these days, that's table stakes. That's the minimum you need to be doing. Personal wins for each of the people involved in this buying decision. What is the personal win? And something I see quite regularly is if you're a subject matter expert, you get really excited about the features and the benefits and the fact that our assessment has got a Kronberg alpha coefficient of whatever it is, and the validity and the accuracy of the tool are really high. Most of your buyers don't care about any of that. They really don't. It's, you know, one of the reasons, look at MBTI, why that's so successful. They don't, your buyers don't care about that. What they care about is the business outcome, whether that's a personal win, that's emotional, or the business result, that's the logical reason. And then you close, that's frankly can be a massive pain all in itself with contracting, and you've got to bring legal in and procurement's job is to reduce the price. So all those people you probably want to engage with a lot sooner. A lot of sales cycles then seem to stop at that point, and this is where I think a massive trick is missed. Delivery. We've now got to deliver on our promises. And I actually think this is still part of sales. And hey, we could have a conversation for a couple of hours about, I think a business only has two departments anyway, you're operational or you're commercial. But that's a different conversation. So we've got to deliver on our promise. And then obviously we're looking for advocates, because we've got advocates within the business. Your competition is less likely to throw you out, and they're more likely to renew. However, when it comes to competition, it is very rare you actually need to worry about other vendors. I pretty much guarantee your number one competitor is do nothing. Maintain the status quo. I never worry about competing about other vendors, because I have lost so many more deals to do nothing than I ever lost to another vendor. So there's some stuff about a little bit about sales cycle. Now, the other bit that people don't seem to worry so much about, but I think is just as critical, is the buying journey. Because obviously the sales cycle, that's from our side, that's from the vendor's side. The buying journey can look like something about this. And even though obviously I've just taken the same slide and changed some of the words, it doesn't directly map on. So pre-trigger and trigger events, they can all be happening throughout at any point in the selling cycle. Some of them apply, consideration, and particularly obviously purchase, that maps with close. But this other thing is going on in your buyer's mind at the same time. The closer you can map the two, the better. But they won't directly overlap. One last thing for now. You may be familiar with this acronym, RACIE. For each of the steps in that selling cycle, and within each step, there's going to be multiple different steps, and there's different ways you can do it. I strongly advocate defining who is going to do what in each step. Now, this is not necessarily an individual. This could be a team or a function, but whatever. But as you can see, I use the acronym RACIE. So for lead generation, who's going to be responsible for doing the lead generation? Who is actually going to do it? Who's accountable? Essentially, who's going to have the difficult conversation if it's not done? Maybe the same function, it may be a different function. Who's going to consult? So whose time and resources, if you're the one who's responsible, are you going to need to draw on, but you're still actually doing it yourself? And lastly, who are you going to inform? They're not going to be, you don't need their input. They're not going to be doing any of the work, but you just kind of need to keep them updated on a weekly, monthly, whatever it is, basis. That's a definition of project, it's a project management and process management definitions. And far too many of these things, because we haven't defined clearly who's going to be doing what, it doesn't happen properly. There you go, there's about 10 minutes. Stop that. Nikita, back to you.
Excellent. Gotta love a good sales cycle. So yeah, what I would add to this is doing nothing is usually the biggest threat, but also doing something can be really challenging, because how do you keep engaged with your client without getting on their nerves is
Yep.
also a very important challenge. And in my experience, what really kind of helps is developing your own style. So, for example, I because I'm known as a subject expert on personality, I collect resources on personality. So I have like a huge amount of links, articles that I keep in my back pocket. And if I have a client who's particularly interested in anything in particular about personality, such as the role of it in relationship, diversity of personality, or learning more about personality, I have these resources that I can share with them and share with them on regular basis. And yeah, the internet has changed things for better and worse.
Yep.
And one of the beautiful things is a thing called LinkedIn. And to me,
Yeah.
what LinkedIn is wonderful for is to keep yourself in people's consciousness, if that makes sense. Because every so often they'll see a post from you about personality on Engage, or a post and go, ah, Nikita, that guy.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, some of my best leads in LinkedIn come from engaging people who visited my website, my page. So if they
Absolutely.
visit my page, I go, hey, how you doing? Anything in the world of psychology got your attention? They're like,
Yeah.
oh, Nikita, we were just thinking about putting a leadership program together. Are you interested? And I'm like, why
Nah.
don't you just message me
Yeah.
instead of me having to message you?
Yeah.
But it's still, I'm very surprised of just how much it can generate.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I would absolutely advocate doing that as part of, and that kind of sits in that lead generation stroke discovery bit of the model. Yeah, it's really, you know, as an omni-channel approach, that should be definitely one of the things you're doing, keeping people on their radar. You know, the last 12 months with COVID has been a perfect example of how some businesses have had to, you know what, people are not going to be buying at the moment, you know, working in learning and development. Yeah, you know what, there's a big freeze on spend there. But okay, just keep people on their radar, useful content, valuable content, because then if you link it to the buying journey, you're going to start suddenly, you're going to touch on trigger events.
Yes, absolutely. And I think one of the key things here is how you perceive your clients, because quite often psychometric publishers perceive their clients as users. And I think this is one of the biggest mistakes they're making, rather than perceiving them as fellow colleagues. And
Yep.
if you treat them as your fellow colleagues, what would a fellow colleague like to see? What would they find useful? And people want to develop. It's just very few publishers offer opportunities for CPD. So I have started offering them, such as, partly this event and the event
Yeah.
tomorrow and courses we run. And you might be surprised of how much people you attract, because to me, what's really important, and cycles are important, they exist within an ecosystem of lead generation, existing clients. And Nigel, you pointed out advocates. I call them product champions. And I think identifying your product champion is so essential very soon. And even just asking your contact within HR, who in your department or in your company is really keen on psychometrics, and there's usually one. It's a
Yeah.
very select field people are interested in. So, and the soonest you can talk to that one person within that company, the better it is. And then you can support them advocating for you within the
Yeah.
corporate, rather than you are advocating directly.
Yeah.
And another key thing is how you can find a couple of people who are not the champions, but advocates. So they're keen for you, but they're not like very keen. But what's important is, in case the champion leaves, you still have a foothold. And quite often people focus too much on just dealing with one stakeholder in a corporate, and then that person leaves, and that's the corporate gone. New
Yeah.
person will come in with their contacts, and if you don't have a foothold, you're out.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely. Just as I've ousted the incumbent provider because my champion has moved on. Yeah, I've lost. I can remember one perfect example, and you know, at the time, the provider I was working for operated a consumables model. So you basically bought credit with them, and then when it ran out, you bought some more. You know, telling people you got £20,000 worth of credit, new HRD, don't care. I prefer a different provider. You're out, they're in. Whereas if you've built it into their processes and built it in, and got your champions, ideally not just in HR as well. Ideally, you want your champions to be in some sort of part of the leadership team as well. But yeah, it's where the lines are often blurred between what's sales and what's service. And I would say for this world, it's everything. It's all sales, because it's protecting future business, and it's embedding you, and it makes you so much harder to oust if you're embedded in their process. And this is just the way we do it here.
Yeah, and it's highly subjective. So what one person sells as psychometrics and coaching is very different to what another person sells psychometric and coaching, and therefore given an experience of what you do is so essential. And I can see that, Diana, that seemed to have resonated with you. Any particular reason? If you just unmute yourself.
Yes. Hi, people. Thanks for this opportunity. I am from Brazil, and I was thinking when I talked about do not care about our competitors, because here in Brazil, the level of psychometry services is very low, very low. It's terrible, Nigel, here in Brazil, the services. And I do care about competitors because they own the market. They are growing so fast. And sometimes I see Nikita posts in LinkedIn, and I think, how can I offer this high-level service of psychometrics and other development tools for HR or for business? I also consider it interesting you say that our advocates or champions might be in the business side, not in HR side. And this is very interesting because I am from HR side. I have 15 years of experience in HR, and the first buyers of psychometrics were business guys, not HR guys. So this is very, very true. And this conversation, all this conversation is very, very interesting, really, really. I'm raising a lot of insights here and figuring out how can I start this endeavor of selling psychometrists here in my country. Thank you, Nikita, for this opportunity.
Oh, thank you, Diana. And as far as if you're starting and the level of psychometry is quite low from your perception, it's actually quite a good position to start and differentiate yourself as a provider of high quality. And the beauty is right now you can do this for events. Like I never met Nigel, and I have not met probably 90% of speakers at my events. But the key thing in psychometry, everybody is slightly obsessed. It's not necessarily the most healthiest relationship with your profession.
Yes.
It's what Carl Jung said, men don't have ideas, ideas have men. And I think in psychometrics it is, everybody is slightly, well,
yeah.
Should we say?
Yes.
And far be it from me as the hairy-ass salesman to talk the legals. The one thing I would say is, just make sure you're aware of what the legal requirements. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I'll be honest, I don't know about South America, but certainly, in the UK, there's no restrictions. Anyone can claim to be a psychometric expert, whereas you go to South Africa, for example, you do need some recognized qualifications. So, I would, but other than that, focus. Just always have at the front of your head, what's the business outcome that they are looking to achieve, and really, in all your pre-sales conversations you're having with someone, essentially you're trying to help them answer two questions. Question number one: whatever the issue is we're talking about, should we actually be doing anything about it at all? Whatever it is, that's question number one. Should you be doing something about it? Also, Nikita's talked about leadership, for example. Okay, yeah. I think we can probably all sit here and say, yeah, you should. But actually, for them specifically, what's the consequences of not doing anything about your leadership, and what's the benefits of doing something about your leadership? So first of all, should we be doing anything about this issue in the first place? If you've got to the point in your conversation with them that they're going, yes, we should be doing something about this, then the next question you need to help them answer is, should they be doing something about it with you? Mm-hmm. Whereas one of the advantages you'll have is where this differentiates you just in approach from other types of vendors is most vendors try and answer it the other way around. most vendors, and I know I said don't worry about your vendors, but I'm now going to contradict myself. But nevertheless, just into your approach, your style, most vendors tend to focus on, this is our USP, this is what we do, this is what we do differently, this is why we're better than everyone else. First, now focus on them and why that, and find out should actually they be doing anything about this at all anyway. And again, because you're addressing that do nothing, because I've as I say, lost far more deals to they've decided to do nothing because we haven't clearly articulated the issue that's going around and the cost to it and the business case and all that kind of stuff, because it's very easy to get excited about the features and the benefits because psychometrics is a bit more interesting than some stuff that you could sell.
With regards to in the US, I think most people do not use the term psychometrician unless you pretty much have a PhD in measurement, evaluation, or research methodology, or math, or there are specific training programs that include masters and PhD in that field. So I'm curious about your vision of using the term very differently, I think, in the UK than we do in the US.
Yeah. I think there's an element of that, and Nikita will be able to probably know better than I. I wouldn't describe myself as a psychometrician because I haven't got I haven't got any sort of psychology qualification. Have I been trained in how to use some of the instruments out there? Yes, and I can. Not least of all because there's no legislation that says I can't. I could give feedback, whereas in some places, you can't even give feedback unless you've actually got the official recognised qualification. But that in the UK, So I wouldn't use the term psychometrician, but if you did if you did some of the assessments I'm familiar with, I wouldn't have any issue giving you feedback.
Absolutely. It depends on your own personal branding. So I hate that word. And what do you want to be known for? Like, I want to be known as somebody who knows their psychometrics, and I've been working for 10 years and qualified in psychology degrees and all that. But to me, I'd rather be known as a psychometrician than go down to occupational or business psychologist, because psychometrics is my area of expertise, and I'm known as an expert on them, or a specialist. I don't believe you can be an expert on psychometrics. It's too complicated. Specialist, yes. And to me, it's in line with what I want. And as far as building a community, Diana, it's a wonderful opportunity to start from scratch, because you can literally build a community. Because to me now, when you start a business, you need to start a community around it. Events, publicity that would attract people that would come and see what you do and would stay around as well. It's a self-selecting sample. You don't need thousands of people. You just need a couple, even dozens, who are your advocates and who talk about you. And whenever people say, oh, I'm doing a team build and I'm going to use this tool, I say, have you talked to Nikita? Oh, who's that? That's that crazy Russian with the psychometrics of his that he loves to use. It has to do with splat or something. It doesn't matter how they call it. The thing is, they refer them to you, and just keeping them constantly engaged. So having regular events, having kind of strange events like the one we have tomorrow, having specific events like we have today. As I mentioned, because people here are a little bit nuts in psychometrics, most of us, and they love to talk about their subject, it's easy to get speakers. It's easier than other fields. So you can create a range of events, let's say every first Friday of the month, or no, Friday is a rubbish day for events usually. Wednesdays, Thursdays are best. And create it online, because you never know right now from where your leads will come from. Such as I have now, because of the pandemic, I have leads from Hong Kong for delivering workshops there. I would not have access to that population, and they would not think of flying me in for extra expense. But now whether they hire somebody from Hong Kong or UK, doesn't matter, because the workshop is online. So there's benefits to that.
Yeah.
And
can I add?
Mm-hmm.
Also, there's almost this the passive outreach, get people on events, doesn't matter who they are, which is great. In addition, if you're going to deliberately target certain industries or companies, this is where, because of the nature of what psychometrics is going to be relevant to any business in the world, just the nature of what it does. My smallest client was a one-man band. He had one employee himself, and he was doubling that. So he had 100% increase in his workforce, going from 1 to 2. And obviously for him, the consequences of getting that wrong was so bad. So, you know, he spent a couple of £100 with me. I didn't go too wild on the commission. But at the other end of the scale, you know, I've sold $500,000 programs on psychometrics, well, that wasn't exclusively, but including psychometrics. So any business in the world could benefit. If you try and sell to any business in the world or any business in your country, you won't. The chances are you won't sell to any of them. So if you're going to proactively go after a certain type, reduce it from any business in Brazil, for example, to any business within you need some demographics. It might be revenue, it might be sector, it might be head count. That's a kind of decision for you to make, but narrow the focus down from any business in Brazil to, and it could be with your background, you know a particular, because you've worked, I don't know what sectors you've worked in. It could be you might do it by sector, because those are industries you kind of know really well. Whatever criteria you decide on, that's obviously up to you, but narrow the focus, because if you try and go for anyone, you won't get anyone.
Yeah, just have a bit more structure as well.
Yep. I have a question. Can I make it?
Yeah,
of course.
Great. In your experience, both of you, is there some sector that is more likely to open the doors for this kind of service?
In my experience, do you know the term white collar and blue collar workers? Do you know that one?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So in my experience, white collar industries.
Okay.
I'm not saying there wouldn't be value, and my experience is primarily in EMEA, so I don't know so much about South America, but certainly, yeah, my experience is more, yeah, the blue collar workers would really benefit from it, but they tend not to have the investment and the spend in them that white collar roles do. So that's probably where I would start.
Okay. Would you say that companies that are B2B services companies are more likely, for example, than financial companies that tend to be more pragmatic? What do you think in your experience?
I wouldn't have. I think both. I think what are the expectations, and how much time and effort and money are companies spending training and developing the people? Then when you're talking about how much your services cost, you know, if they're spending fortunes on developing people and it's not working and they're failing, you know, financial services, you know, even if they're selling B2C, they still might be having multi-million-pound numbers that they're supposed to hit because they're selling to high net worth individuals. So yeah, I wouldn't exclude on that criteria personally. But again, you know, you probably know your market better, the market better than I do. Nikita?
Great. Unfortunately, here most of psychometrics providers have leads and opportunities in recruiting field, in talent acquisition field, and I do not consider the most valuable approach for psychometrics in organizations. I think we can definitely contribute with coaching development, leadership development, but it's more difficult to enter, to start the conversation with development organizational teams. It's easier here in Brazil to start conversations with talent acquisition teams, with recruiting teams. I don't know if it's the same, Nikita, in your country and market.
Certainly is in the UK. The UK, by far, the biggest area psychometrics is used is in talent acquisition. And it's often easier because they tend to measure so they probably know how much average cost of hire is, an average time of hire. But I would agree with you, absolutely. That's, you know, often they're paid for the assessments about these people, and then, you know, the moment they walk in the front door, they put the report in the drawer and never look at it again, despite all the valuable information.
Yeah,
Yes.
And the question is, what do you want to specialize in? And seeing where the response is. And let's say if you are with a client for selection, it makes it easier to go to development. And if you development, go to selection. And yeah, just being open about this and seeing where the response is and seeing how it evolves. The key thing is to have regular contacts with clients and not letting it slip. As far as finding the clients, as far as sectors, I would look more for personality preferences, to be honest. You need to attract people high on openness, high on extroversion, especially if you're championing a new product. So you need to pitch your events and your communication to be more attractive to people who are more curious. You don't need to attract, same as companies, Nigel mentioned, if you attract everybody, you will attract no one. So therefore, know the people you want to attract. And if you attract quite extroverted, high on openness individuals to a group session, it's going to have more energy in it as well, that you can leverage as a facilitator to make people even more excited about the product. And therefore, it's a self-selecting sample. And the question is then how you can leverage this. You want to attract people who've been using the same assessment for 20 years and like to stick with it, but you don't need them. This will come with time. And another key thing is time. Corporate clients take time to win over. It can be years. I mean, my longest one was 3.5 years. Well, actually, it's 5 years right now. A client came through that now we're actually starting conversations about a project. 5 years.
Oh, you beat me. Took me 3 from first engaging with at the time the head of European recruitment at Pepsi. Took me 3 years because they were tied in. They had a long-term contract with SHL, but I built the relationship. And when we had I got the opportunity to bid when their contract they had with SHL came up. Didn't win it, sadly, but there you go. Can't win them all.
She did bid, but that's the key thing. It will take time sometimes, and just to stay the distance. And sometimes when you come in just at the right time, like they're reviewing the psychometrics they're using, and you just came into the right time, talk to the right people, it can be really quickly. So you can even turn a major client in like several months. But this is more of an exception rather than the rule. And this is what I feel quite often psychometricians and people business development lose patience and they go into something shiny. If they just kept up for a couple of months, their subscription would expire. They'd be looking for something new. But
and if I to add to that, if I can reference what I said earlier, you can have the most psychometrically robust tool out there. You can have the best tool on the market. That will probably have very limited effect on whether or not they buy it. Because people do not buy for logical reasons. People buy for emotional reasons. You need the logical reasons, but again, as I said before, that's table stakes. That gets you in the game. The people buy for emotional reasons, and hence why, as I said, why MBTI is so successful.
Yeah, and people also like to buy what they know and what's acceptable, and also minimize their risks to put their neck out for a new tool that nobody knows. And therefore, but you can present it, you can make them feel comfortable. And I think that if you are quite entrepreneurial, entrepreneurs don't have too much patience quite often. And therefore, they will say,
salespeople.
Yeah, if people are suspicious of a tool, they'll go, they just need to have a growth mindset. No, you just need to stop being so fixed mindset about people needing growth mindset. The thing is, it's perfectly normal to be conscious, neurotic, and all of that when a new tool is presented and people worried about how their data is being used. We shouldn't criticize them. We should listen to them and make sure all the questions are answered in order to build a transparent, psychologically secure contract with the individuals. And
don't added to that, don't be afraid to just get a little win. Sometimes that psychological contact is really important, and sometimes you have to earn the right to have the more sophisticated conversation. So I'm not saying sell them something they don't need. You still got to be true to what you believe in your own personal values and ethics, but nevertheless, you know what, you may see a huge opportunity. Just win that little bit of it. Prove yourself and your service. Hey, if you can get the big win first go out, fantastic. No one's going to turn it down, but the chances are you're probably going to need to set several little wins before you start as I say, you have to prove and earn the right to have the more sophisticated and bigger opportunities.
Absolutely. And the key thing is follow up. So for example, if you do provide any freebies, etc., which is perfectly all right, it sometimes helps to build that small wins. Because even people completing psychometrics is a win, not even to get paid for it, but if people complete it. Then connect with that person on LinkedIn. Every person you touch within the business, metaphorically speaking, not really speaking, because right now we cannot even hug each other. So any person you have touch points, let's say, with, make sure that you add them on LinkedIn. That's what I wish I knew, for the first 3 years of my career when I didn't add my clients onto LinkedIn. Because you might be surprised that even 5-7 years later, they'll say, oh, I remember you did that. Now we have a chance for a team build. Would you like to have a chat? And like, how the hell do you remember me? And but it is about being on the radar, etc., and just sometimes how long it takes.
Yeah.
Nikita,
Anybody else got any questions?
Yeah, I've got a quick one, if that's okay, Nigel, and it's for both you and Nikita. Have you noticed any changes, particularly over the last 12 months, in the criteria that clients are applying to purchasing decisions around psychometrics?
Because I haven't been selling psychometrics for the last year. What I probably could say is, when the 08-09 credit crash, when that happened, and going completely off topic, I was watching a documentary about it on Sky last night, and I got really scared because I didn't realize in America how close the whole system got to collapse. Certainly when that happened that happened because I was selling at the time. It was interesting how it actually drove better conversations in my experience, because it went from people have, the budgets got squeezed, and so rather than people saying, yeah, we got a few grand kicking around in the budget, and again, this is the early days, so psychometrics was nowhere near as well known. People were like, yeah, what the hell, we'll spend 5 grand, 10 grand, maybe not 10, but certainly 5. Because we've got it in the budget, what the hell, it looks a bit of fun, what the hell. That stopped pretty much overnight, but it actually drove, I think, better conversations, and actually led to bigger deals from a commercial, a bigger sale. You had to work harder for it. So certainly the last big hit on the economy. Nikita?
Yeah, I would agree. Conversations got deeper and more interesting and more diverse, because I think, I don't know, this increase in neuroticism had led people to be more empathetic and more human. I think the interaction got more human with my clients. Yeah. Ironically, though, we're not in contact, but it's more human.
Are the challenges more, is diversity more of a challenge? Is that, selecting for just out and out performance? Is there a noticeable shift towards culture and team fit, or neurological diversity? Or
people are thinking how diversity of personality might be impacted by a particular selection, yes, and particular ranges. But people are looking for more nimble solutions. Oh. So let's say, even if you deliver a half-a-day workshop, it's how you deliver, let's say, two 2-hour workshops 2 weeks apart, and give some learning in between. Yeah. And this nimbleness and this more kind of a flexible approach. And they're looking for digitally native tools as well. Yeah. Not paper and pencil look as necessarily as good as digitally native products. They look for presentability, engagement, and digital solutions, digitally native solutions as well. So that's probably a bit more demands that way. Because,
so those of you, I know some of you sent me requests. Thanks for LinkedIn. So those of us see. So I'm in the process. I'm job hunting at the moment. So I'm in the conversations with a number of opportunities, some assessment providers, and some other stuff. I've been quite disappointed how few companies have asked me to do a psychometric assessment. I mean, really. I mean, obviously the assessment providers, obviously, but how, that's, so I think from a recruitment point of view, I still think in terms of, in relation to your question, sorry, you disappeared, Neil?
Neil, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, you disappeared off me off my banner where everyone's Peter is. When it comes to that diversity piece, whatever criteria you're using, I still have some big question marks as to whether or not businesses are taking that seriously, or are they just paying lip service to it from a recruitment point of view. And I'm not sure. I don't have an answer, but I'm not convinced. But that this is an issue, because I don't see it here if you read board reports and if you look at discussions at the C-suite, they're not talking about this sort of stuff.
Not necessarily, but some of them are starting to notice it a bit
Some,
more.
but no. And I think Stephanie, I think I saw your hand go up.
Yes, I was wondering about, you mentioned the follow-up and how important it is to stay in touch with your prospects, but I don't know, I'm high agreeable, high considerate, and I can pick up when people start to get annoyed, and they say you have to reach out, like 7 times or something before you'll get a hit, but I'm very conscientious about not overwhelming people with the follow-ups. And how do you balance that, staying in front of people without seeming pushy, or what type of language do you use?
So personally, I wouldn't worry about language. There's a quote, I think it's Zig Ziglar, said, for every 1 deal you lose by being too pushy, you will lose 99 by not being pushy enough. I really, and I get, because I'm similar in those traits as well. I would absolutely say, do not worry about it. You will by far lose 100-fold more by not being pushy enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
And also bear in mind, obviously, it's not necessarily when you talked about the seven outreaches. Now, whatever, there's lots of suggestions, whatever the number is. That's not necessarily outreaches. This is what Nikita was saying about sharing stuff on LinkedIn and engaging in their activity, and if they're making comments and sharing your expertise, that's all part of it. So it's not necessarily outreaches; it's touch points.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I would honestly
exactly.
say, do not worry about being too pushy, because you probably won't push hard enough.
Okay.
Absolutely. And Stephanie, considering if you're high on agreeableness, then statistically likely what you think is pushy is not pushy, because people who are pushy don't consider themselves to be pushy, and don't worry about it. So, so in my experience, it's just increasing the openness of how touch points look like.
Mm-hmm.
So in the beginning, I always thought, send a proposal, follow up, have you read my proposal? And I found those things quite shattering. Like, yeah, exactly. I had the same reaction as Nigel just demonstrated internally, and maybe externally as well. But then I expanded just how these touch points look like. So I run monthly events. So all my prospective clients get a notification about my upcoming events. So I say, I would like to invite you to this event. Feel free to share with your colleagues. And I share probably 300-400 messages a month like this, if not more. In 4 years of doing this, I only had 2 people who told me to stop.
Wow.
In the whole 4 years, people like to be invited to things. They don't like to be told or sharing your picture. I don't get this on LinkedIn. I wanted to do a kind of parody of Beyonce Single Ladies, if you're in doubt, put your picture on it, but I just can't find the right rhyme, but it seems to be the song of LinkedIn. It's like, whether it's empathy or humility, people stick a picture of themselves on it. Yeah, people don't really care about this, but people care about things they're interested in. And this is why it's important to find what your client is interested in. Let's say they're interested in the Big 5. So I'll send them stuff on the Big 5 and latest studies. I'll be as geeky as they are. Or my clients might be interested in growth mindset, so I send them stuff about balance of both sides. Anytime my client is interested in diversity, I'll say, oh, have you read this article? And over time, I just build up this resource. And I have started sharing this resource on LinkedIn. I have an article, my favorite resources on personality. And it's videos, LinkedIn articles and papers. And feel free to take them and share them with your clients as well. But build up this...
Sorry, quick question, and I suspect I know the answer. Have you personally created any of this content, or have you just found it elsewhere?
I started creating my content this year, but before it was just stuff that I found. So
if you don't have the time or the ability to create it yourself, there's plenty of interesting, relevant stuff out there.
Oh, completely. I mean, there's some fantastic YouTube videos And there's lectures from Stanford. There's comedy sketch called Anonymous Personality Test, which is great. And a lot of different stuff. And you can share this, and you can share it on LinkedIn. Another thing I discovered was LinkedIn. It's a platform for other people to look smart, not for you to appear smart. So the best way is to ask a question. So if you think of writing some blog post, it will get like 100 views if you're lucky. If you make that blog post into a question, you'll get tens of thousands of views.
Yeah.
Because people will start commenting and it will grow. So like saying, what do psychometric trainings miss more often? Or, one thing you want to learn more about psychometrics, or like worst experience you had with a psychometric.
Yeah.
And people love that sort of stuff. They
And
love to comment.
And if you can personalize it, and there's lots of talk in sales about personalization. So the biggest, and I know this is post view, so it is a vanity metric, but personally, my best one ever, I got 14,500 views. Part of it was because I related it to myself. Yes. It was promoting a leadership event. So there was a point to it, but rather than just using the company I was working for at the time, rather than just sharing the marketing collateral, I used that, but then made it relevant and gave an example, talked basically about my first sales leadership role, where I was supposed to, the classic. I walked out on the Friday as part of the team because I got the promotion. Walked in on the Monday. I'm now the sales manager, and I'm supposed to have learned over the weekend how to manage people. It's something a lot of people can relate to. The other thing, and I'm just going to have a rant because it's a big, massive bugbear for me, people who use either Leonardo DiCaprio playing Jordan Belfort or a photo or a video by Jordan Belfort to promote sales excellence. And you're like, this is a convicted fraudster, and you're using him as the example of good sales. And that's one of the massive things that annoys me, because it brings sales into disrepute, and sales should be an honorable profession, and it is when done properly.
Yeah, it's about
in what we do. We're with no due respect to anyone who sells cars or double glazing, that's not what we do. We do something a bit more interesting and exciting than that. So anyway, sorry, rant over.
No, I totally agree. It's what image you portray of the profession and sales. And I think, but graphics are important, and I completely agree with you, Nigel. It's a combination of a personal experience. Like one of the good posts I did was listing 5 things I learned about using psychometrics and 10 years of using them. And then added, what have you learned? So if you do a personal experience and the question, that allows other people to contribute. It's quite key. And if you want the growth of the post, make sure to comment on every response. And when you reply to them, you do the @ sign, like I would say, Nigel @ so it will tag him. So then this post will appear on all his friends' connection. Say, Nigel was tagged by Nikita in this post.
The other one that I've been told, I don't know this for certain, the other one I've been told is if you are linking it to any sort of video or registration or anything, put that in the first comment number 1 rather than the post, because the algorithm likes it more. I don't know why, but that's what I've been told by supposed LinkedIn gurus.
There's a lot of LinkedIn rumors of how to do this.
It's amazing how there's a lot of LinkedIn gurus that that have talked about that I've been doing LinkedIn for 30 odd years. And it's like, really? It's only been around about 12. So,
I know, that's what makes it so much fun.
Yeah.
But yeah. And also when people like your posts, so let's say if a lead that you really want to engage with, like the post of yours, contact them.
Yeah.
That's another suggestion.
Yeah. Or look at there. I mean, I did a lot of looking at their activity. I've identified who it is. My most recent role, I was after Chief Learning Officer.
Yes.
So I, worked out who all these people. So if you don't know already, you can, even if you're not connected to them, you can follow them. So follow their activity and engage with interesting, valuable content. At some point, if you do it if you add enough value and of interest, it will start driving them. Okay, all right, they'll start looking at your profile. They might then go to your website. It's a longer term strategy, but yeah, if you just the classic go in and say, I'm selling X, do you want some? Yeah, that's not going to work.
Yeah, the first one's free. Yeah, that's
well, that's you said that earlier, Nikita. That's why. So when I first joined, I'll say that when I first joined Thomas International, which I know everyone hates, when I first joined them, that's how I was taught. I was taught, and I've probably got some in my little office here, you can probably see, that the paper and pen scoreable, so carbonized, and you kind of, it was a scoring method I was taught. And basically I was taught the sales method is get by hook or by crook, get into the boss's office, and within 10 minutes, get the paper out, get him to fill it in, score it, and then give him some feedback. Because psychometrics was so badly known at the time, particularly in SME size businesses of less than 1,000 employees, sometimes people were just wowed by how can you possibly know that just from answering 24 questions.
Exactly. So it gives people an experience, and sometimes some of the negative experience people had before, that's what shapes them. Because in Russian we have a saying, for a man who never tasted anything sweeter than a carrot. And it really applies, because if they had a negative experience of psychometrics before and they only had one experience, they think all psychometrics are like this.
Yeah.
And therefore engaging with them and saying, well, what didn't you like about it? And all of this, rather than getting defensive, is sometimes key.
It's usually because whoever's used it hasn't used the tool properly. I'm sure we've all heard, someone say, I failed the psychometric. Well, that probably means, and I've heard managers say that. I've heard people say that to recruits or people. Sorry, we really liked you, but you failed the psychometric. Well, there you go. There's a court case right there. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's a lot of things there, but dealing with curiosity.
Yeah, but usually it's because the manager doesn't know how to use the tool properly.
Absolutely. And just talking one last thing about LinkedIn, I recently discovered is join really geeky groups. Like there's a good group called Psychometrics Forum. They host very geeky events in London town. But now what's really important, I only discovered this recently in group settings. You can look at members after you're a part of the group, and you can message members directly even without contacting them. And the beauty is, if it's geeky, it's a self-selected sample, because only the most geekiest psychometricians know the Psychometrics Forum. So you already know that those people in that group have that interest. Otherwise, they wouldn't end up here by accident. An algorithm is not going to recommend them something as geeky as that. So the fact is, if they're there, they, are likely to be interested in psychometrics.
Yeah.
And then you can just go through them and look at particular territories or particular companies, or sometimes just search, like, even if you have basic membership of LinkedIn, you have an opportunity to search for a lot of different people in the beginning. And sometimes I feel bored, like, let's say I type in the psychometric tool, any particular I'm interested in. And then I just look at all the people who have it on their LinkedIn, and then I systematically add them. I go, hello, fellow psychometric aficionado. What got your attention right now in the world of personality assessment? Or if people are qualified like 5 tools ago, well, I'm happy to see I'm not the only one obsessed with well, I wouldn't use the word obsessed to get going, but just play with this and connect with as many people as possible. And the key thing is, if people connect with you, ask them, like, nice to meet you, John. What got your attention in the world of personality psychology? Or something like that.
In fact, actually, back to selling psychometrics, one of the best ways actually to improve your conversion rate is asking for the business. When you've actually had the conversation, you've identified some of the issues, you've worked out, okay, you've presented a solution based on your challenges and your issues, and we've worked out, you should be doing something about it. And now we're talking about, okay, this is why you should be doing about with me. Just asking for the business, actually. It's amazing how many people don't actually, but actually that's how we got a little bit distracted. But yeah, I went wild when Nikita talked about sending over a proposal and then following up. I would, and it doesn't always work like this because some people don't like it, so you have to respect that. But I would always say, if never send a proposal over, arrange to say, right, I'll prepare it, and then let's have a conversation virtually or in the flesh, and I will talk you through the proposal.
Yes.
And obviously I will share it, and I might say, well, I'll share it with you in advance the day before, so you got time to read it. Or I might say, obviously you'll get a copy afterwards, but if you possibly can, talk them through the proposal. And if you've got that champion, so last year, again, it's not doing me any favors because I'm now going to be honest, I didn't win it, but I was pitching for the company I was working for at the time, and it was, it was a £700,000 deal, and we were basically, it was last 3, so we had to pitch to the CEO. My champion, my champion, the amount of conversations I had, because bear in mind she had, and we were about 3 times the price of everyone else, but we still made the last 3. I was using her regularly to engage, and I talked her through the proposal in advance. She suggested changes in language because of just to suit the not to lie or anything like inappropriate, but just to use the language that they used internally. That is all the little stuff that's going to help. So yeah, your champion's not just in terms of when you've won the business, but can actually help you, because it's in their interest. Because if they're advocating you, it's in their interest that you come in and do a really good job if you're at that final stage pitch.
Yes, and they will get brownie points as well if the program is a success.
Yeah.
And because they brought it in, so everybody wins.
Absolutely. And thanks, Sam. Good to meet you.
And what's also really kind of cool, what you mentioned, Nigel, is about setting up a call before you send the proposal. Same way, if you have an initial lead, setting up a call with that person before you send them the psychometric.
Yeah.
So if people come to you and they're interested about the tool you're selling, rather than sending them a tool and asking them to complete, set up a time to talk to them. After the time in the diary they confirmed, ask them, would you also like to complete the tool? And if they say yes, send them the link. But don't send the link first and wait for their completion, then have a call. First schedule a call, then send the link. And you'd be surprised of just what a difference it makes.
Yeah.
And after, if you had a good feedback session or a coaching session based around the tool, and people keep mentioning their manager, say, would your manager like to complete one? Here's a link. Or we have a couple in our team who'd like to complete this. Sure. I usually say, first 10, 20, depends the size of the business, is free, because you need to build up that momentum. And when they actually quite like it, one time actually, when I was doing a pitch, we did a free team build for 20 of them. That only happened once. They actually called me and said, we'd actually like to pay for you for this.
Oh, okay. Go on then.
You go on then. Well, if you're asking, yeah, sure. All right.
Yeah.
But I was quite flabbergasted because it never happened before. It's like, well, we'd actually like to pay you for it.
Yeah.
So that was an anomaly, but
yeah.
Can happen.
I once got asked by a client, because they were even in those days, this was quite a few years ago, but in those days they were still quite casually dressed in the office, everyone. And I always used to come in a suit and a tie. I was actually asked specifically, could you dress more casually to fit in? And I was like, wow, because I've always been in the mindset I would rather be overdressed than underdressed. Even now you can see I've got a smart shirt and a smart jumper on. What you can't see is the crappy jeans I'm wearing, but but yeah, I will always. But yeah, no, that they did actually ask me to be more casually dressed. And I was going to say, and I'm conscious, obviously, people are beginning to drop out, and I've got a bit of time. I've got to go and pick up my kids from school in an hour, so as long as. But I wanted to share a quick story. So my worst ever sales meeting selling psychometrics. And so we got so it came as an in lead. So they came to us, and basically the MD was also the founder, and he was looking over the next couple of years. He wanted to step back a bit from the business, probably move into a chairman of the board type role, step away from the day to day. And he basically wanted us to help him identify who's his successor, probably from his senior leaders, who was going to be his successor, which one of them included his son as well. Great, no problem, fantastic, delighted. So obviously arranged a convenient time to go and see them. We went in, we sat in and started talking, and he said, so tell me about usual sort of conversations. Tell me about the business, the challenges, growth plans, where you're looking to take it, all the sort of things that you would normally talk about. And okay, and so why do you understand the strengths and the limitations of the different people, and what does the leader of the future need to look like? And as I said, all that kind of conversation. And the thing that kept coming back to me time and time again, he said this on multiple occasions, and we had several conversations, was the problem is no one, not even no one here, but just no one will ever be as good as me. And my son has got massive problem. He just needs to buck his ideas. He's got so little confidence, and that's why he'll never be as good as me. And I remember I'm sitting there and I go back and I'm thinking, well, I know what the problem is and I can solve the problem. How do I get him to sign the contract before I start telling him? Because and so I went away and I came back, and so I went away and I did exactly that. Talked to my subject matter experts, and we put a sort of a leadership development not an assessment center, but kind of a bit of a development, a bit of assessment, and just generally a package together. Went back and sort of was talking him through what it looked like, and he looked at me and went, nah, this is not right. No one's ever going to be as good as me. No one's okay. All right. I said, okay, all right. Okay, maybe I've misunderstood. So look, because I'd pushed all my notes. Let's forget about what we talked about. This is one to tell the story about. You can't win them all. And let's start again. And so he started going through, and he said something. And to this day, I still can't remember actually what he said, because what I do remember is what came after. And he said something, and I was like, "Can I just check that?" Okay, all right. I think we're going to have to agree to disagree on this one. And he looked me right in the eye. Don't ever fucking disagree with me again. And I mean, as you probably worked out, I probably don't usually I'm not usually lost for words. I've usually got something to say. And I was, okay, all right. Thank you very much for your time. Don't think we're going to be able to, as it happened, he still did some business with us. He went, someone else went but told him something he didn't really, but it was the most shocking and just the worst meeting I'd ever had. But yeah, it was amazing. And it was like,
you're well out of there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like you want to win, is it?
Yeah, don't want to, because no matter what you do, he's going to give you a kicking because he's not going to be happy. But yeah, so yeah, sometimes the ultimate decision maker is often the person who's the problem. And yeah.
Please tell us, did you send the contact to your competitor?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good shot. Yeah, I didn't think of that at the time, but yeah, just go and push them in front of one of the opposition and say, "No, you can deal with it."
Yeah, absolutely. Here's some colleagues that you should talk to. Yeah, but there's some wonderful people you meet, and everybody is different. And the key thing is not to take it personally. And you also don't know how the relationship will mature over the years. So sometimes the person, even if the sale is unsuccessful, just still connect with them, still keep in contact, because they might move companies, and the new company, it might be more appropriate. And this actually happened a couple of times. So it just keeps it can be quite a long distance.
Yeah.
And also make sure to support your independent consultants. So if you're a psychometric publisher and you have a few independents running about, they can be sometimes fantastic champions to get you into corporates, but they need a bit of support. Let's say if they're a great facilitator and they want to create a new revenue stream through distribution of psychometrics, it's quite a different skill set that you need to sell psychometrics and sell workshops. But they could use with a bit of support. They still have the relationship, so you can help them to leverage that relationship they built with the key stakeholders, but you can create that subject matter expertise on psychometrics. So together you'd sell it rather than just expecting them to know how to sell psychometrics just because they have a relationship. So there's also that element of how you manage your independent practitioners that help you with that.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, good people, I know that some of you stayed 8 minutes past. So this was an experiment. This is the first session we ran on selling psychometrics. How was it for you? What would you do differently? What did you like about this?
It was good. I mean, for me, I'm just really starting out this journey, so it's not necessarily doing things differently. It's just really nice to get just a few reminders of things that I probably already know in my head somewhere, but you just need it bringing to the forefront, don't you?
Yeah. In sales, it's invariably in sales, do the basics really well. You're going to be there or thereabouts, whatever metrics and whatever numbers you've given yourself, or if you work for someone you've been given. Yeah, just do the basics really well.
Cool. Thank you.
Consistently.
Yeah. Well and consistently.
Thank you for that, Victoria. Any other takeaways or thoughts people want to share before we wrap up?
No, just thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Stunned silence is usually a very good sign or a very bad sign. We'll go for it. We'll assume positive. So
Well, it depends how extroverted you are, because my natural disposition is like, any questions? Good, moving on. So I always make sure to count to 10 inside my head before continuing. Like, any questions? And we'll sit with this for a while. So, and on that note, thank you everybody for participating. Thank you so much, Nigel, for coming. Please reach out and connect on LinkedIn. Our next event is tomorrow, 1 o'clock, same Zoom link. It will be about what the bleep are we measuring. So that's going to be quite interesting in itself, but that's very techy and geeky. So, you know, gamification, big data, self-report, they all claim to be measuring personality, but really is it the same construct? That's going to be the discussion. We're also going to have an event coming up. What can clinical learn from occupational and occupational from clinical, as far as how psychometrics are used. And there's going to be events on ethics and all of that jazz. And yeah, and if you have any questions of personality or assessments or what's out there, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to have a chat. And if you have any fantastic sales positions in psychometrics or heard of them, maybe Nigel would like to hear of them too.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm always happy to have a chat if you want to pick brains or run some ideas around me about selling this stuff. Always happy and open to have a chat.
Perfect. Thank you,
Great,
everybody.
thank you.
Good to meet you all. Cheers. Ta-da.